Commander Rylax watched through multifaceted eyes as three humans sauntered into the grand hall of the Galactic Engineering Institute. His crystalline exoskeleton vibrated with barely contained anxiety. These were Deathworlders, after all. Their very presence set off every danger sensor in the facility. Jasmine Patel stretched casually, seemingly oblivious to how her Earth-evolved muscles could probably bend the nearby quantum alloy support beam. Behind her, Marcus Rivera whistled appreciatively at the floating holographic displays, while Kenzo Tanaka quietly took notes on an antiquated paper notebook that made several passing Zentech scholars cringe. "Welcome to the Institute," Rylax managed, his universal translator struggling to maintain composure. "Though I must admit, we expected you to spend at least a week in gravitational adaptation chambers before." "Oh, this." Jasmine gestured at the 0.7G environment. "This is like a vacation compared to Earth. Though I have to say, your artificial gravity generators could use some tweaking. There's a resonance flutter every 3.2 seconds. Rylax's crystalline form shifted colors in surprise. It had taken their best engineers months to even detect that minor fluctuation. These humans had noticed it within minutes. "Yes, well," he clicked his mandibles nervously. "Perhaps we should proceed to your orientation. Though I must warn you, our curriculum may be quite challenging for—" "Is that the Helios Project?" Marcus interrupted, pointing at a massive hologram dominating the center of the hall. His eyes lit up with genuine excitement as he studied the complex weapon system that had stumped the galaxy's finest minds for over half a century. Rylax's color shifted to a deep blue of embarrassment. "Ah, yes. Though perhaps we should focus on your basic courses first. The Helios Project is our most advanced. Your quantum cascade amplifier is oscillating out of phase," Kenzo remarked quietly, still sketching in his notebook. "The perfection of the design is actually causing destructive interference at the subatomic level." The hall fell silent. Hundreds of alien scholars turned to stare at the human student who had just casually identified the core problem that had plagued their most ambitious project for decades. Grand Engineer Vexthra, a gaseous being contained within an ornate environmental suit, floated down from her observation platform. "Impossible," she declared, her suit's speakers vibrating with indignation. "The Helios Project represents the pinnacle of engineering precision. Every component has been refined to theoretical perfection." "That's exactly the problem," Jasmine said, now examining the hologram from multiple angles. "You've engineered out any possibility of adaptation. The system can't compensate for quantum fluctuations because it has no flexibility built in." "Flexibility?" Vexthra's containment suit sparked with anger. "You suggest we deliberately introduce imperfections into our design?" "Not imperfections," Marcus explained, already pulling up technical specifications on a nearby terminal. "Tolerance ranges. On Earth, we learned pretty quick that trying to make something too perfect usually means it breaks the moment real-world conditions don't match your theoretical models." Rylax watched in fascination as the three humans began dissecting the project's specifications with casual confidence. They weren't showing the proper reverence for the Institute's most prestigious undertaking, but their insights were unnervingly logical. "This is preposterous," Vexthra declared. "You are mere students, and humans at that. The Helios Project has challenged our finest minds for 50 years. You cannot simply walk in and want to bet." Jasmine's eyes sparkled with the kind of determination Rylax had only seen in creatures fighting for survival. "Give us 45 minutes with the prototype. If we can't get it working, we'll spend the rest of the semester in basic courses." "And if you succeed?" Rylax found himself asking, even as his better judgment screamed at him to stop this madness. "Then you have to admit that sometimes the best engineering solutions come from a species that had to figure out how to make things work with sticks and stones before they reached for the stars." The hall erupted in a cacophony of protests, arguments, and excited chittering from various species. Vexthra's containment suit crackled with electromagnetic disturbance as she processed this unprecedented challenge to the Institute's traditions. Finally, the Grand Engineer spoke. "Very well. You have 45 minutes. But when you fail, and you will fail, you will apologize to every member of this institution for your arrogance." "Deal," all three humans said simultaneously, already moving toward the prototype chamber with the kind of confident purpose that made Rylax's exoskeleton shiver. As he watched them go, Rylax couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to witness either the most embarrassing failure or the most remarkable triumph in the Institute's history. Either way, he suspected the next 45 minutes would change their understanding of engineering forever. In the prototype chamber, Jasmine cracked her knuckles while Marcus began reconfiguring diagnostic equipment, and Kenzo continued his mysterious calculations. "All right, team," she grinned. "Let's show them how Deathworlders solve problems." Behind them, the Helios Project's quantum core hummed with perfect, stable, useless precision. Unaware that it was about to experience the chaos and adaptability that had helped humanity survive on their harsh world long enough to reach the stars. The gathered alien engineers watched in horror as Marcus Rivera casually began disassembling a quantum harmonics array that had taken 3 years to calibrate to perfection. His hands moved with surprising precision for a species the galaxy considered barely more than clever primates. "What are you doing?" shrieked Professor Zilks, his gelatinous form rippling with distress. "That array's calibration sequence alone took about 2 years too long," Marcus interrupted, not looking up from his work. "You've got it locked so tight it can't breathe." "Quantum harmonics arrays do not require respiration," Vexthra noted acidly. Jasmine laughed from where she was reprogramming the control interfaces. "It's a metaphor. Like how you can't clench your fist forever without getting a cramp. Sometimes you need to let things loose a little." Kenzo had spread his paper notes across a hover table, the ancient wood pulp technology drawing horrified stares from passing xenotechnology students. His drawing seemed deceptively simple compared to the holographic models floating around him, yet his quiet voice carried authority as he spoke. "In human engineering, we learned that perfect systems are often the most fragile. Nature prefers redundancy over perfection, adaptation over precision. Listen to yourselves." Vexthra's containment suit crackled with electromagnetic disturbance. "You're suggesting we deliberately introduce flaws into the most advanced weapon system ever conceived." "Not flaws," Jasmine corrected, her fingers dancing across control surfaces. "Flexibility. Look at your own data. Every time you achieve perfect calibration, the system becomes more unstable at the quantum level. It's like trying to pin down an electron's position and momentum simultaneously." Marcus pulled out what appeared to be a primitive Earth multitool, causing several alien observers to back away in alarm. "Sometimes you need to rough things up a bit to make them work better. Like breaking in a new pair of boots." The next 15 minutes were almost painful to watch for the assembled alien engineers. The humans attacked the Helios Project with a combination of sophisticated understanding and what appeared to be savage brutality. They stripped away layers of precision adjustments, replaced quantum-locked components with systems that had actual physical moving parts, and introduced what they called controlled chaos into the energy distribution network. 30 minutes remaining," announced the facility's AI, its tone suggesting disapproval of the ongoing sacrilege. Kenzo looked up from his calculations. "Jasmine, the core's quantum state is beginning to shift. The uncertainty matrices are aligning more naturally. That's because we're finally letting it find its own balance," Jasmine replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Marcus, how's that mechanical linkage coming?" "Almost there. You know, it's funny. All this advanced technology, and what it really needed was something as simple as a timing belt. Kind of like that old saying about space programs spending millions developing pens that work in zero gravity, while cosmonauts just used pencils." Vexthra's containment suit vibrated with barely contained outrage. "You're comparing our quantum cascade amplifier to primitive internal combustion engines." "Why not?" Marcus grinned. "Both need to handle power transfer, both need to deal with timing issues, And both work better when you stop trying to control every microscopic aspect of their operation. The holographic displays tracking the weapon's quantum states began showing patterns that the Institute's engineers had never seen before. Instead of the rigid, perfectly aligned energy flows they'd spent decades trying to achieve, the system was developing organic, almost living patterns of energy distribution. "Impossible," whispered Professor Zilks, his gelatinous form rippling with conflicting colors. "The quantum fields are. They're self-stabilizing." "But how?" "Because we stopped trying to force them into perfect alignment," Kenzo explained, still sketching. "Think of it like a crowd of people trying to exit a building. If you try to control exactly where each person steps, you create gridlock. But if you give them some basic guidelines and let them figure it out themselves, the crowd naturally finds the most efficient path." Jasmine finished. "Living systems are messy, but they work. That's how we survived on Earth, not by achieving perfection, but by being adaptable enough to handle anything our Deathworld threw at us." The alien observers watched in fascination as the humans continued their work, their seemingly chaotic approach revealing an underlying wisdom that challenged everything the Institute taught about engineering. Components that had refused to work together for decades began synchronizing in ways the original designers had never imagined. 20 minutes remaining, the AI announced, its tone now carrying the hint of uncertainty. Marcus stepped back from the modified hardware, wiping his hands on his uniform. "Primary systems are reconfigured. How's the software looking, Jasmine?" "I stripped out about 60% of the control protocols. Turns out all those safety interlocks were actually causing the problems they were meant to prevent. It's like they were so afraid of failure they programmed in failure as the only possible outcome." Vextra's containment suit emitted a high-pitched whine of distress. "You've removed the safety protocols. Are you trying to destroy the entire facility?" "No," Kenzo said quietly, holding up one of his sketches. "We're trying to let it work the way it was meant to work. Sometimes the safest option is to trust in the natural balance of things." As if to emphasize his point, the quantum core's hum changed pitch, settling into a deeper, more stable resonance that made the alien engineers exchange worried glances. The humans had taken their perfect creation and transformed it into something that seemed almost alive. And somehow, impossibly, it was working better than ever. The question now was whether they could complete their modifications and prove their theories correct before their 45 minutes ran out. As the facility's AI announced the halfway point of their allotted time, the three humans shared a determined look. They had torn down decades of careful engineering in less than 20 minutes. Now came the harder part of putting it back together in a way that would either revolutionize galactic engineering or spectacularly prove their alien observers right about humanity's barbaric nature. 15 minutes remaining. The AI announced, its synthetic voice now carrying an unmistakable tone of fascination. The prototype chamber had become a storm of activity. Holographic displays showed energy patterns that looked more like weather systems than weapon schematics. The quantum core pulsed with a rhythm that reminded the alien observers uncomfortably of a heartbeat. "You see," Jasmine explained while rerouting power conduits, "Earth taught us something important about chaos theory. Sometimes the most stable systems are the ones that look the most chaotic on the surface." Professor Zilks's gelatinous form rippled with skepticism. "Explain." "Take our weather systems," Marcus offered, calibrating what appeared to be a deliberately asymmetrical power distribution network. Perfectly ordered systems tend to build up energy until they catastrophically fail. But chaotic systems, they're constantly releasing and redistributing energy in small, manageable amounts. Kenzo held up another of his paper sketches, this one showing what looked like a river delta. "Nature doesn't build perfect straight channels. It creates branching, irregular patterns that can adapt to changing conditions. That's what we're doing here." The alien engineers watched in growing amazement as the humans' modifications began to show results. The quantum cascade amplifier, once locked in rigid perfection, now flowed with an organic efficiency that their instruments could barely comprehend. 10 minutes, announced the AI. Vextra's containment suit crackled with reluctant curiosity. But how can you possibly control such chaos? We don't. Jasmine grinned. We just give it boundaries and let it find its own balance. Like teaching a child to walk. You don't control every muscle. You just provide support and let them figure it out. The holographic displays were now showing power levels that should have been impossible according to the Institute's theoretical models. Yet somehow, the system remained stable, its controlled chaos working in perfect harmony with the laws of physics rather than trying to force them into submission. The universe itself runs on controlled chaos, Kenzo observed quietly. Perhaps that's why your perfect system never worked. You were trying to impose order on something that naturally tends toward balanced disorder. As their modifications continued to prove successful, the aliens began to understand that they were witnessing more than just engineering. They were seeing a fundamental difference in how humanity approached problem-solving, a perspective shaped by evolving on a world that had never allowed them the luxury of seeking perfection. 5 minutes until evaluation, the AI reminded them, as the three humans moved into the final phase of their modifications. The final 5 minutes transformed the prototype chamber into a scene of controlled chaos that would haunt the alien engineers' nightmares for years to come. Marcus had stripped down to his undershirt, covered in various lubricants as he made final adjustments to the mechanical components they'd introduced. Jasmine's fingers flew across multiple control interfaces simultaneously, her movements almost a dance as she balanced power flows that should have been impossible to reconcile. 2 minutes, the AI announced. Kenzo's quiet voice cut through the tension. Primary quantum matrices are aligning naturally. The system is finding its own equilibrium. Just like we thought. Jasmine nodded, not looking up from her work. It's not fighting physics anymore. It's working with it. The assembled alien observers had grown from a handful to hundreds, word spreading through the Institute about the humans' unprecedented attempt. The chamber's observation galleries were packed with beings of all species, watching in fascination as decades of established engineering doctrine were turned upside down in less than an hour. 1 minute remaining, the AI intoned. Marcus stepped back from the hardware, wiping his hands. Mechanical systems are as good as they're going to get. How's the power flow? Stable, Jasmine reported. Well, stable-ish, which is exactly what we want. Vextra's containment suit vibrated with anxiety. Stable-ish is not a scientific term. Maybe it should be, Kenzo suggested, making one final notation in his paper notebook. After all, nothing in nature is perfectly stable. Everything exists in a state of dynamic equilibrium. 30 seconds. The quantum core's hum had changed completely from its original perfect tone. Now it pulsed and flowed like a living thing, energy moving through it in patterns that reminded the alien engineers of blood flowing through veins or sap through a tree's branches. Final power-up sequence initiated, Jasmine announced, her hands moving across the controls with practiced confidence. 10 seconds. The humans stepped back from their work, standing together as the modified weapon system came fully online for the first time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up, declared the AI. Please step away from the prototype for evaluation. The entire institute held its breath as Grand Engineer Vextra approached the modified Helios project. Her containment suit's sensors extended, taking readings that made her electromagnetic field fluctuate in disbelief. This is impossible, she finally declared. The power output is 30% higher than our theoretical maximum. The quantum stability is. It's operating in a state our models said couldn't exist. That's because your models assumed perfect stability was the goal, Jasmine explained. We aimed for dynamic stability instead. Marcus gestured to the modified systems. Look at how the power flows adjust and adapt. It's like a river finding its path. Never exactly the same twice, but always getting where it needs to go. The alien engineers crowded around the displays, their various sensory organs trying to process what they were seeing. The humans had taken their perfect, precise, non-functional weapon and transformed it into something that barely resembled its original design. Yet undeniably, impossibly, it worked. Kenzo held up his notebook, showing a series of surprisingly simple diagrams. We didn't just modify the technology. We changed the underlying philosophy. Instead of fighting against quantum uncertainty, we embraced it. Commander Rylax's crystalline form shifted through colors of amazement. You completed in 45 minutes what we couldn't accomplish in 50 years. Because you were trying too hard to control everything, Jasmine said gently. Sometimes the best engineering solution is to set up the right conditions and then trust in the natural tendencies of the universe. But this goes against everything we teach at the Institute. Professor Zilks protested, his gelatinous form rippling with agitation. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, Marcus suggested. After all, if you only teach one way of thinking, you'll only ever solve the problems that fit that approach. Vextra's containment suit hummed as she processed the implications. You're suggesting we need to fundamentally change how we approach engineering. We're suggesting, Kenzo said quietly, that there's room for multiple approaches. Perfect precision has its place, but so does adaptive chaos. The trick is knowing when to use which. The prototype chamber erupted in discussion as the implications began to sink in. The three humans had done more than just fix a weapon system. They had demonstrated a completely different way of thinking about engineering, one shaped by their species' evolution on a world that had never allowed them to rely on perfection. Well, Vextra finally announced, her containment suit glowing with what might have been grudging respect. It seems we owe you more than just advanced placement. Perhaps we have as much to learn from you as you from us. Jasmine grinned. That's what we were hoping you'd say. After all, the best engineering comes from combining different perspectives. Though maybe, Marcus added with a smirk, you could start by adding some simple mechanical backups to your critical systems. You know, just in case all that quantum perfection needs a little help from good old-fashioned physical engineering. The chamber filled with various forms of alien laughter as the tension finally broke. The Helios project hummed in the background, its quantum core pulsing with life, a testament to what could be achieved when the precision of alien engineering met the adaptive chaos of human innovation. As the three humans began explaining their modifications to their eager alien colleagues, Commander Rylax couldn't help but wonder what other impossible problems might yield to the unique perspective of these Deathworlders who had turned their harsh evolution into an advantage. Perhaps, he mused, watching Jasmine enthusiastically explain chaos theory to a fascinated group of Xenotech students, this was why humans had survived their deadly homeworld, not despite its challenges, but because of them. The Helios project stood as a symbol of this new understanding. Not a perfect machine, but a living system, dancing on the edge of chaos and order, much like the species that had finally made it work.